often, that's another one, we often deny that we are bigots because we are not aware of our biases. You see, that's why earlier I said, we need to learn, we need to be aware of our biases. And how do we do that? We need to exercise self-reflection and reflect and examine our own racial identity. Is that fair? And that's what we spend most of our time on. Okay, what is microaggression? You might read and come across this. Now, Stanley Su and company describe microaggression as a brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, and environment indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, and that communicate hostility, derogatory or negative racial slights or insults towards people who are culturally different from us. So microaggression can happen in daily interaction and social session. Sometimes it's not for any particular reason. It's just part of our everyday. You know, some are not offended by it. You know, like so often people say, you're Chinese. That's okay because we have a good relationship, right? We tease each other, right? But it is still discrimination, isn't it?
I think at times we can be so cautious of not offending somebody that we avoid trying to describe that person, we avoid using their skin color, which is the most obvious way of describing that person.
That's right. And so it will be, if you are overly conscious, you'll be so mechanical, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't live the relationship. And you will just kind of formulate the relationship. But in the beginning, I think we had to be cautious. And after a little while, you forget, right? Like Elizabeth's forgotten I was Chinese. See, what are the two major blocks or major issues for discrimination? Skin color, language.
So even if you come with a handicap or you're hearing impaired or something that makes you different, that's also a different culture too.
Exactly. I'm glad you bring that up. Accent and disabilities. It's, you know, it requires a lot of us to do a lot of things. What is one of the hardest things for you to overcome in cultural discrimination?
Maybe like the ones that are more innate and maybe come into your automatic thought and then you want to stop yourself.
Yes, automatically. Well, is it wrong when you see somebody coming in, all of a sudden you assume that they are such and such? When I walk into a Chinese store, what would be the first thing they greet me with? In Chinese. Chinese have so many dialects. And then they started to go, you know, in Mandarin. And I would say, ni hao. Then they realized that I don't speak Mandarin. Then they'll say, well, what dialect do you speak? Oh, okay. I understand a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Well, why can't we just go in there and say, this is what is the official language? Or languages. English and French. So this is our environment. So therefore, people who come in here and do business, they need to learn our environment too. Isn't that interesting? But does not make me feel less respected They just want to respect me in case, because of my age. When they speak to little kids, they might be say, well, I mean, they don't know Chinese, then they could do it. So this is why, so it is very complicated when we talk about cultural self. And the mainstream psychologist believes that, there are hindrances if we are not aware of it. Okay, I think we should go into that. Okay, the two big camp, a big group, is that individualistic, we mentioned that, and collectivistic. Now, research had focused on these two topics, and they say collectivistic is associated with non-Western culture. The individuals encouraged to subject personal goal to group goal. Now that is, how many people understand what collectivistic culture is? You do, right? The Asian society. There are good things, but there are not so good things. For example, what are the good things? Like, they have the value system. When the parents raise the kids using all they have, so that the children have a good future. And what I expected, that when they are established, they will come home and serve the elders, right? And so you see multi-generation living in one house. So you got to look after grandfather, grandmother, and then father and mother. And I remember my husband's father, he was very accomplished. He's got the money, but he had to live in the house, and he will give over. Can you imagine? His salary to his father. Now that's unheard of, right? And they, well, okay. But that's the way they were raised, and they would not question it, right? They feel that's meaningful because the parents suffer so much to raise them, give them a good life and everything else they need. And now obviously, when they grow up, I don't know whether they expressively say, you look after me, but somehow the relationship is such that they will respect. So now, if we do that, what would happen to the young people? I don't have money to give back to you, right? And I want my, what do you call it? Nucleus family. I only live with my wife and my children. You are lucky if I meet you and talk to you every week, right? So this is very different, individualistic and collectivistic. Now, which is good? Which is bad? Again, right? The good, there's the downside. The not so good, there is the bright side. And more when I have clients coming in from a collectivistic society, they were so disappointed that the children do not look after them. And they are in a new country, and they need help. In the meantime, there's very few social groups. They feel so isolated. On the other hand, the young people need to compete in their profession, and they need to look after their kids. And some, as we talk about, mixed marriages, if the spouses are from another culture, there's a lot of adjustment, a lot of conflict. So you are the psychotherapist. Where do you stand in that situation? How could you make their lives meaningful and positive experiences. You know, it is very difficult. Okay, when we talk about individuals are encouraged to subject personal goals to the group goal, not only within your family, within your extended family. How about the uncles, the aunts? And that's getting very complicated. And that's not easy. So, but in their view, life satisfaction is derived from carrying their responsibility and maintaining group harmony. What does that mean? That means you have to sacrifice a lot of things that you want to do, a lot of things that you want to have, and a lot of things that you don't want to do, and then you have to do. So how are we going to adjust? And of course, you know, we talk about they were taught to obey parents. It's a good thing, isn't it? Because they are not mature enough. The parents have gone through, the grandparents have gone through, and those are valuable knowledge to pass on to the next generation. I shouldn't knock that. That is what we are lacking in our society. The children find their own company with very little guidance, with very little value system or moral system that is instilled. But how can you do it? You're going to get a group together and teach them? Go to church, yeah, churches do teach some, and other groups too. But I think the most powerful tool is modeling. How you live, what you say, and who you are. Then you will reproduce the person that you want them to be.